Hello, my name is Larry Curtis. I'm a retired Staff Sergeant with the United States Army. Today we're here to talk about why we want to hire veterans. For 22 years, I served with the United States Army as a combat engineer, as a transportation specialist, and also as a chemical warfare specialist. My last job, it was my job to run the gas chamber and prepare our soldiers so we could fight and win in a contaminated environment. All the worst stuff that you've ever heard of in all the movies, I actually got to play with it. It was pretty fun for me. Let's talk about where we actually get our veterans from. The 5 branches. Each year they discharge about 200,000 individuals. This is not counting the National Guard and Reserves that are also located in your area. These individuals have been given technical training and also leadership training in a variety of jobs. A little bit of that we will cover in just a couple minutes. Hollywood has portrayed a lot of our soldiers as the Rambos and the per se Arnolds or the commandos of the legends of Hollywood, if you will. Let's for a second just kind of look at what Hollywood portrays us as.
I'll give you a war you won't believe.
I think we all know these two movies. It's a splice between Commando and Rambo. In 22 years of service, I never ran across these individuals. Guys that wanted to be like them, yes, but there's very few individuals out there that could actually go out and do a single mission by themselves with the effectiveness that what you can do in Hollywood. I can tell you from experience that one man against an army isn't very good odds. Now you can see that lots of weapons training is what Hollywood portrays us as. We can pretty much pick up any weapon and take out the bad guys. Rambo even shoots a bow. Never once have I ever seen a soldier, Marine, or Airman use a bow in combat. So, yeah, that's some of the things that Hollywood portrays us to be. In my time in service, I never saw anyone that could do things like that. So, we have a strange type of humor. So I think more of the individuals that I served with were more like another John, because you have John Rambo and John Matrix from Commando and Rambo. Let's take a look at a soldier by the name of John Winger.
Where's your drill sergeant, men?
Hold up, sir! Hold up, sir!
Yes, sir. These are Sergeant Hulker's men. He was injured during basic training.
Go-getters right there.
I see. So am I to understand that you men completed your training on your own?
That's the fact, Jack! That's the fact, Jack!
Captain,
Yes, sir.
these are exactly the kind of go-getters I want working on my EM-50 project in Italy.
And right there, that leads us into military jobs that lead into the civilian world. There's quite a few. Some of the civilian population does not understand of all the different types of jobs that we actually hold in the military. Let's cover a couple of those. Did you know that you can go into accounting in the military? Each one of the 5 branches has their own accounting department, also known as finance. We also have transportation or truck drivers. This is one of the trucks that I used to drive. It's called the palletized loading system. It's pretty fun to drive. This is called the HET, heavy equipment transport. We can haul around tanks and heavy dozers and multiple other things on this with this piece of equipment. It's a pretty fun piece of equipment to drive around. It can give us an outlook into the civilian trucking world, but obviously this is a little bit heavier than what most of your civilian trucks will be. Along the lines of that, we have our logistics department. All the gear that we send overseas, and that gear that comes back, has to go through our logistics department, whether it be flying out on a plane or shipped across the ocean on the ships. Another job that many people do not understand that we have are bands. Yes, every base that I've ever been on has, in one way, shape, or form, some type of band connected to it. Not a very easy job to get into. Every instrument that your local high school band would have, they're going to have, plus a couple others. I've seen electric guitars and bass guitars. Even singers are part of the band. So yes, that's actually a military occupation. My first job in the Army was a combat engineer. I got to blow stuff up. I also got to build stuff. The building stuff transfers quite easily into the civilian world. The blowing stuff up, not quite so much. So our next position, human resources. Yeah, almost every company I've ever been involved in one way, shape, or form has somebody doing paperwork, processing people in, processing people out. So even in the military, as you process onto a base, you process out, you're going to go through the HR. You're also, if you're going in for a promotion, you also send that paperwork through the HR. Communications, believe it or not, when you go down range and you're out in the middle of the desert or out in the middle of the woods, AT&T does not kind of show up out there to make sure that you got phone service. Our commo individuals handle our satellite communications, our communications between vehicles with the radios, so on and so forth. Very technical job, and they do a great job at it. The medical field. Obviously, we get guys that are hurt downrange, or even back here on bases. Medical teams, from ER teams to surgeons, physical therapists, EMTs, everything that you can think of at your local hospital, we have on a base, and we can treat our soldiers, airmen, and Marines. Police. Yep, believe it or not, there are actual police forces on almost every single base that I've ever been on. I try to stay away from them, just like any other cop that's out there. But they do a pretty good job keeping the base secure and safe. We also have our own correctional team at a couple different locations that handle prisoners of war or individuals that no longer think that it's they should be in the military, so they get handled by those guys. Probably the unsung heroes of any military operation is going to be its mechanics. If you can have two different moving parts on an object in one way, shape, or form, it's going to break eventually. And these individuals keep us rolling with our wheel vehicle, our track vehicles, our tanks, our aircraft, everything that you can think of, HVSC, the air conditionings, all the stuff like that. Our mechanics all take care of that stuff. Instructors and trainers. Now, this was generally my primary tasking as I was leaving the Army. It was my job to train our soldiers to fight and win in a contaminated environment. The suit that you see there, I used to teach my guys how to run around in one of those things. And with the stuff that we have going on here in Michigan here in 2020, everybody's complaining about wearing masks. Try to wear that thing when it's 90 degrees out or in 100% humidity. So wearing these little masks isn't that bad compared to wearing this one. The difference between the military branches, or excuse me, not the military branches, but the how we lay out, you have active duty, National Guard, and reserves. Let's cover that real quick. First, I think generally we all understand what active duty is. We've all had a cousin, a relative that has been on active duty in one way, shape, or form. It is the 5 branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the Coasties. I don't think we've necessarily got the Space Force yet, but it might be coming, who knows. These branches are all federally funded. They all ultimately are ran by the president. He is called the commander-in-chief for a reason. These are all full-time positions. In the state of Michigan, there is no active duty bases. You'll see National Guard bases, but there's no real active duty bases. Now our active duty units. The active duty units that you're going to find, there's only two types. There's the Air Force and the Army. That's it. It is ran by the governor, just like the Federals are ran by the president. The governors run the National Guard. These guys can be called up for emergencies like the riots recently, or weather emergencies, things like that. They are state funded. The funding comes through the state to the soldiers for their training and their pay and so on and so forth, but it is subsidized by the federal government. It depends on what they're doing, when they're doing it, training and so on and so forth. Most of these soldiers are part-time, so generally speaking, you're also going to have about 3 or 4 different bases that the National Guard train at. Fort Custer here in southwest Michigan, Camp Grayling up in the center part of the state, and then you have Selfridge, which is over on the east side by Detroit, which is an Air Guard base, and it had multiple units in it. Your reserves, difference between the National Guard and reserves, I'll cover that in just a second, but all 5 branches of the services have reserve units. They are federally funded. In the state of Michigan, there's not necessarily a reserve base for training. You'll see multiple armories, but they will train on the National Guard bases. Kind of to separate the National Guard and the reserves. A lot of times on active duty, we call these guys the weekend warriors, but their training is just as good, generally speaking, as our active duty counterparts. They just don't get to do it as often. That being said, in 2016, a National Guard unit from here in Michigan sent a sniper team down to the active duty competition. It was an international sniper competition. There was teams at the federal police level, local and state police levels, plus active duty Marine Corps. Navy had a team. Australia sent out a team. And why this is really cool is our weekend warriors, as they're jokingly called, they actually won the competition from the active duty and the full-time people. So kudos to those guys back in 2016. For our Guard and Reserve guys, they're going to do a minimum of 2 weeks per year. This is called annual training. We also call it AT. They're also going to be required to do 1 weekend per month. Sometimes that includes a Friday, which may mess with some people's schedule, but usually they can let you know exactly when that's going to be, when they got to be at drill. Most of these guys are going to be part-timers, but there are some full-time individuals that do supply or the HR type of work that keep everything rolling. So once the soldiers come in on the weekend, they can come through, do their training, and get right back to the civilian world. The Guard and Reserve are normally trained in the same spaces, but like I said, the Guard controls, they're in charge of all the bases here in the state of Michigan. Some of the benefits for actually hiring a veteran. One, they come with leadership training already in their background. 2, they're very trainable. If you have a tasking that you haven't been able to find anybody to do, try to get a veteran to accomplish that. They take things to heart when somebody says it can't be done. So give them taskings that nobody else wants to do. These people are multitaskers. There's very few individuals as War Stripes that I know of that only has one job that they can do. They normally can do multiple things. They're great at multitasking. So give these guys a chance. Another thing is you can get a tax break from the government for hiring veterans. Pretty straightforward. You have to send them out for training. You can get funding back for actually to pay your company to send somebody to training, and veterans are one of those individuals that can get that type of training. Some of the things that are perceived with service members that come back from combat are the scars of war. Some are visible scars, some are non-visible scars. Yes, PTSD is a thing, post-traumatic stress, but give these guys, take them on an individual basis. Give them a chance. Take them at their merit. Don't let the press kind of force feed you of what these individuals are capable of by their biased views. We pretty much covered everything on why we should hire a veteran. They come with skills that they've learned from serving in our armed forces. We've covered the difference between the active duty, the National Guard, and reserves. Normal, everyday patriots are who signs up for the military. They can be a great part of your company in one way, shape, or form. We've covered the benefits of what they can bring, their technical, their leadership, and even the taxes they can get for training a veteran. And we've also covered some of the perceptions of the scars of wars. I hope I've persuaded you in hiring a veteran, or at least looking at a veteran. The next time that you go to some type of job event or a recruiting event, please give these individuals a shot at that next position that you're having a hard time filling. They will definitely surprise you. Please be safe, have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.